How do primitives learn an admiral's name before he's ever spoken to them? Admiral Vorth's 6 eyes stared through the viewport of his escape pod. The pod spun slowly, lazily, like a leaf caught in eddies it couldn't see. Through the reinforced glass, fragments of his flagship tumbled past. A section of hull here. A broken weapons mount there. The twisted remains of the bridge tower where he'd stood 3 minutes ago now cartwheeling into the black. 847 years of watching, and he'd never known. Behind him, where eternal dominion had been, there was only debris. The ship he'd commanded for 147 years, the flagship that had broken 23 civilizations, was coming apart the way a sandcastle does when the tide finally reaches it, not exploding. Explosions were fast, dramatic, almost noble. This was slow, methodical, quiet. His mandibles clicked once, his species' laughter reflex autonomic, unbreakable. No sound came out. The clicking stopped. All 6 eyes focused on the same thing, a command chair still bolted to a section of hull spinning end over end. He could see the armrests, the fabric, the stains where his second-in-command had spilled coffee 3 days ago. 3 days, it felt like another lifetime. The human weapons had done this. Not plasma, not lasers, not anything the Empire had prepared for. Tungsten rods. Metal cylinders 2 tons each accelerated to 97% of light speed by magnetic rails hidden inside asteroids. The Empire's shields, legendary across 7 sectors, had stopped energy weapons for 800 years. They stopped plasma. They stopped particle beams. They stopped radiation. They did not stop 2 tons of metal moving at 97% of light speed. Physics did not care about the Empire's reputation. Momentum did not negotiate. Vorth had just learned that 800 years of conquest meant nothing when the prey species spent 847 years taking notes. His transmitter crackled. Admiral, are you receiving? Commander Hyun's voice shaking. The scales on Hyun's face would be pale now. Vorth had seen that tell 100 times on lesser officers. He'd never seen it on Hyun before. Yes, Vorth said. His own voice sounded distant, like someone else speaking through water. Patch me through to Imperial Command, Priority Alpha. This message must reach every world in the Empire within 6 hours. His hands trembled as he activated the recording. The emergency rations pack had fallen from its clip. He watched it float past his face, then looked back at the viewport. 6 eyes stared into the transmitter. The galaxy's oldest conqueror began to speak the words that would change everything. The Sol system is hereby designated as forbidden territory for all Imperial vessels and personnel. 3 standard weeks earlier, the coffee had gone cold hours ago. Defense Coordinator Minsal Hain drank it anyway. The mug was chipped on the rim. She'd had it for 12 years, since her first posting in Seoul Deep Command. 3 miles beneath the city, carved from solid granite and shielded against every known form of detection. The command center hummed with the quiet energy of people who had been waiting their entire careers for a moment they hoped would never come. The main tactical display filled an entire wall. It showed the solar system in perfect detail. Every asteroid, every patrol craft, every quantum sensor node in the network that had been watching the galaxy for longer than most civilizations lasted. And it showed the red dots. 300 of them moving steadily inward from the orbit of Neptune. Minsal touched her left earlobe, a tell she'd kept on purpose, a small leak in her otherwise impenetrable calm. 29 generations of human intelligence officers had trained to hide their tells. She'd kept this one so that when she lied with truth, people would look at her fingers and miss the knife. Status report, she said. Lieutenant Commander Dong Hyun approached with a tablet, his footsteps silent on the rubberized flooring. He was younger than her by 20 years, but his eyes had the same flat calm she saw in the mirror. All stealth units are in position. Quantum sensors confirm the Galaxian fleet is maintaining standard approach formation. They're not even trying to scan for hidden threats. Their encryption hasn't changed in 400 years, Coordinator. We've been reading their tactical manuals since before my grandmother was born. Minsal's fingers drifted to the journal on her desk. The leather was cracked and soft as silk, the spine held together with wax thread that had been restitched 14 times. Inside, 29 generations of her predecessors had added observations. Species encountered, tactics observed, weaknesses catalogued. The first entry was dated 847 years ago, written by a woman who'd watched alien ships pass through the outer system and realized humanity wasn't alone. She'd also realized humanity wasn't ready. So she'd started taking notes. Their laid ship, Minsal said, designation. Dong Hyun's fingers danced across his tablet. Eternal Dominion, commanded by Admiral Vorth. 6-eyed species, scales darken with age, mandibles for communication. He's conquered 50 worlds personally. His fleet has never lost an engagement. Until today. Minsal picked up her cold coffee and took a slow sip. The bitterness grounded her. Their communication array, are they broadcasting on the standard frequency? Standard and predictable, they're not even encrypting their hails. Then let's say hello. On the bridge of Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vorth watched the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. His 6 eyes tracked the rotation of continents, the swirl of clouds, the deep azure of oceans that covered 70% of the surface. A beautiful world, a ripe fruit hanging low on the branch, completely unaware that the hand was already reaching. Behind him, the bridge buzzed with the comfortable confidence of professionals who had done this 100 times before. Commander Hyan's claws clicked across his control panel. Sub-Commander Krell adjusted his weapons display. Scanner Operator Vex ran diagnostics on the quantum array, his voice a low murmur against the hum of the engines. 300 warships stretched behind them in perfect formation. Black titanium hulls reflected the distant light of Sol. Each vessel carried enough firepower to glass an entire continent. Together, they represented the most powerful invasion force the galaxy had ever seen. Vorth's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Commander Hyan, he said, his voice like stones grinding together. Begin the ritual. Signal the primitive world. Hyan nodded, his scarred scales catching the light. His clawed fingers danced across the holographic interface. The quantum communication array hummed to life, broadcasting on all known frequencies. Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. Hyan's translated voice echoed through the bridge. You are now subjects of the mighty Galaxian Empire. Surrender unconditionally within one solar rotation or face complete annihilation. Resistance is futile. Your primitive technology cannot match our superior forces. The bridge crew waited. Usually this moment brought panicked responses. Desperate pleas for mercy, stunned silence. Some species tried to negotiate, others simply went quiet as their governments collapsed into chaos. The response came crisp and immediate. A human woman's voice in perfect Galaxian dialect without a translator. Warm and almost friendly. Greetings, Admiral Vorth of the Eternal Dominion. This is Defense Coordinator Minsal Hain of Earth Command Central. We've been monitoring your approach for the past 3 standard weeks. Thank you for finally arriving. Sub-Commander Krell dropped his plasma rifle. The clatter echoed through the sudden silence. Admiral Hyan said, his scales already paling, they know your name, they know our ship designation. How do primitives know your name? Vorth's mandibles twitched, but he maintained his composure. Continue monitoring their transmissions, Hyan. There must be an explanation. Minsal's voice continued, unhurried. We understand you've come a very long way to visit our little world. However, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, Admiral, we're not the ones who will be surrendering today. Please proceed to Coordinate 779 by 442 for your formal surrender ceremony. Our reception committee is waiting. The bridge fell dead silent. In the vast expanse of space around them, the Galaxian fleet continued its slow advance toward Earth. But something had changed. The confidence that had filled the air moments before now felt heavy and uncertain. Tactical Officer Vex's voice cracked. Admiral, long-range sensors show minimal defensive positions around the planet. A few orbital stations, maybe 50 small patrol craft. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest destroyer. Then they're bluffing, Vorth decided, his confidence returning. Humans are known for their emotional responses. This coordinator is probably trying to buy time while their governments panic. But deep down, something nagged at him. The human's voice had carried no fear, no desperation. If anything, she had sounded almost pleased to hear from them. Open a direct channel, Vorth commanded. I want to speak to this Hain personally. The communication array crackled to life, and the human woman's voice filled the bridge again. Hello again, Admiral. I was hoping we could chat before things get started. Vorth leaned forward, his 6 eyes narrowing. Human, I am Admiral Vorth of the Galaxian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately, and your species will be granted the privilege of serving the Empire as laborers. Minsal's voice didn't waver. That's very generous, Admiral, but I'm afraid we must decline. You see, we've been preparing for visitors like you for quite some time now. Earth isn't quite as defenseless as your scouts reported. Vorth's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. Human arrogance will make your defeat all the more satisfying. He gestured to Hyan. Continue advance, full fleet, let them see what's coming for them. 3 miles beneath Sol, Minsal watched the red dots continue their approach. The main tactical display showed every Galaxian ship in perfect detail. Position, speed, weapon status, shield condition. The quantum sensor network had been tracking them for weeks, feeding data to the AI systems that calculated firing solutions, escape vectors, and probability cones. Beside each red dot, a number counted down. Estimated time to Mars orbital line, 17 minutes. Status of Protocol Hammer, Minsal asked. All 47 platforms report green, Dong Hyan said. Fusion reactors at 94% capacity. Rail guns loaded and calibrated. The asteroid camouflage is holding, their sensors show nothing but rock. The stealth fleet. Captain Tahoe reports all units in position behind Jupiter's shadow. They're running cold and dark. No detectable emissions. Minsal touched her earlobe and the quantum array, monitoring all known Galaxian frequencies. Their tactical chatter suggests they still believe our defenses are minimal. Commander Hyun just reported that our primitive patrol craft wouldn't survive a single volley. Good, let them think that. She looked at the journal on her desk. The cracked leather spine, the waxed thread, the pages filled with 29 generations of handwriting. Some entries were neat and precise. Others were slanted and rushed, written in the middle of crises. All of them added something. The first entry, 847 years ago, was only 3 sentences. They passed through the outer system. 7 ships, unknown configuration, we hid, we watched, we will remember. The most recent entry, added 6 months ago, was longer. Galaxian Empire, 6-eyed species. Energy shields optimized against plasma and particle weapons. No known defense against kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds. Recommend railgun platforms in asteroid belt. Recommend quantum sensor network. Recommend stealth fleet in outer planets. Recommendation approved. Awaiting contact. Minsal had written that entry herself. She closed the journal and set it beside her keyboard. 17 minutes, she said. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they're in control. The deeper they come into our system, the harder it will be for them to escape when the trap closes. On the bridge of Eternal Dominion, the atmosphere had shifted. Not panic, not yet, but something had changed. The officers who had been laughing at human primitiveness now spoke in lowered voices. Krell had retrieved his plasma rifle, but his hands were shaking. Vex kept glancing at his scanner readings as if he expected them to change. They didn't change. The human defenses remained minimal. A few orbital stations. 53 small patrol craft. Nothing that could threaten a single Galaxian destroyer, let alone 300 capital ships. And yet, Admiral Hyun said quietly, stepping close so only Vorth could hear. How did they know your name? Vorth's mandibles twitched. Intelligence gathering. Their spies must have infiltrated Imperial space. Impossible, their ships have no FTL capability. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Then explain it. Hyun had no answer. Vorth turned back to the main screen. Earth was larger now, the details of its surface becoming visible. Continents, oceans, weather systems, cities, though they were too small to see from this distance. Beautiful, fragile, conquerable. Continue, advance, Vorth said. I want to see their faces when their bluff fails. Coordinator, the alien fleet has entered the asteroid belt. Minsal straightened in her chair. The main display showed red dots moving through the field of tumbling rocks, their formation still perfect, their confidence still intact. They had no idea. Any change in their sensor readings? Negative, Dong Hyun said. They're not even scanning the asteroids. Their tactical doctrine assumes empty space is empty. It hasn't been empty for 800 years. No, coordinators. It hasn't. Minsal picked up her cold coffee, then set it down again. Her heart was beating faster than she wanted to admit. 37 years of preparation, 29 generations of watching, all of it coming down to the next few minutes. Estimated time to Mars orbital line. 8 minutes. Notify all units, prepare to execute on my mark. On Eternal Dominion's bridge, the mood had shifted again. Now there was unease. Not because of anything the humans had done. They'd done nothing. Their pathetic little patrol craft continued their lazy orbits. Their orbital stations continued their silent rotations. Everything was exactly as the sensors had reported for the past 3 weeks. But Vorth couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Hyun scanned their planet again. Full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about their defensive capabilities. The scanners hummed, data scrolled across displays. Preliminary scans confirm minimal surface defenses, Vex reported. Their largest cities show typical infrastructure patterns, no sign of planetary shields or major weapons installations. And their military communications. Mostly civilian traffic, news broadcasts, entertainment. There's no indication they're mobilizing. Vorth's mandibles clicked, then why am I uneasy? No one answered. 3 miles beneath Seoul, Minsal watched the countdown. 3 minutes. Her finger hovered over the transmit button. Beside her, Dong Hyun stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The rest of the command center had gone quiet. No chatter, no movement, just the soft hum of computers and the distant vibration of the fusion reactors that powered the facility. Coordinator, Dong Hyun whispered, the alien flagship is approaching the trigger point. I see it. Should I? Wait. The red dots continued their advance. Eternal Dominion crossed the orbit of Mars. The rest of the fleet followed, 300 warships moving in perfect formation, completely unaware that they had just entered a kill box that had been waiting for them for 800 years. Minsal touched her earlobe. All units execute. The universe became light. Thousands of stealth drones, disguised as asteroid debris, dropped their camouflage simultaneously. What had looked like chunks of rock and twisted metal suddenly split open, revealing sleek metallic hulls, weapons bays, and targeting sensors. On Eternal Dominion's bridge, alarms screamed. Vex's voice cracked into a shriek. Sir, we're reading massive energy spikes from every direction. Those asteroids, they're not asteroids. Krell's plasma rifle clattered to the deck again. Hyun's claws scraped across his control panel as he tried to make sense of the sensor readings. Vorth's 6 eyes went wide. Impossible, he roared. Our scouts surveyed the system for months. There was nothing here. The first tungsten rod struck Eternal Dominion's shields before he finished speaking. The impact sent shockwaves through the massive vessel, throwing crew members to the deck. The barrier field flickered once, twice. Then it dimmed, not failed, not yet, but visibly strained in a way Vorth had never seen. Shields down to 60% from one hit, Hyun reported, his voice climbing toward panic. 60%, Admiral, that's not possible. Vorth grabbed his command chair to steady himself. Return fire, target those. Another impact, the ship shuddered harder this time. The lights flickered, somewhere behind him something shattered. Shields down to 40%. All ships scatter formation, Vorth commanded. Find those platforms and destroy them. But his weapons officers were struggling to find targets. The human drones moved like schools of fish, weaving between the larger Galaxian ships with impossible precision. Every time the aliens tried to lock onto one group, another appeared from a different direction. And the rail guns kept firing. 12 rounds per minute, 47 platforms. Each round carried enough kinetic energy to level a city. The destroyer Void Render took a direct hit amidships. The tungsten rod punched through its hull so fast that the crew never even knew they were under attack. One moment the ship was there, advancing on Earth. The next moment it was a cloud of debris, expanding outward in a glittering sphere of metal and atmosphere. What was that? Krell screamed. What just hit us? Kinetic projectiles, Vex said, his voice barely audible over the alarms. They're firing solid metal rods from the asteroid belt. The projectiles are moving at, he paused, reading the numbers again, 97% of light speed. That's impossible, Hyun said. The power requirements alone would. Another cruiser exploded. Dark Triumph this time, its engines destroyed by a swarm of human attack drones that had emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid. The ship spun out of control, its hull venting atmosphere, its weapons firing randomly into empty space. Vorth watched his fleet die. Eternal Fury broke in half. The tungsten rod that killed it had been fired from a platform disguised as a small moon. The projectile punched through the ship's forward shields, through its armor, through its reactor core. The explosion was brief and bright. Return fire, Vorth screamed. I want those platforms destroyed. But the Galaxian weapons were designed for energy combat. Their plasma cannons cycled too slowly. Their particle beams scattered against the drone's stealth coatings. And every time they locked onto a target, the humans did something unexpected. They'd been watching for 800 years. They knew every tactic, every formation, every weakness. And they'd built their entire defense around what the Empire had never faced. Admiral, Hyun said, his voice suddenly quiet. We're losing ships we can't afford to lose. The Void Render, Dark Triumph, Eternal Fury, and now the Hammer of Vengeance just took a hit to its engine section. How many ships left? Hyun checked his display, his claws trembled. 212, Admiral. We've lost 88 in less than 4 minutes. Vorth's mandibles clicked and kept clicking. The autonomic response to stress impossible to control. All ships, he said, forcing the words out. Emergency retreat, full power to engines, get us out of this system. The surviving Galaxian vessels turned to flee. And the humans had prepared for that too. Captain Taho's voice echoed across all human communication channels. Phoenix leader to all shadow units. Execute protocol Hammer, show them what Earth looks like when it's angry. From the shadows of Jupiter's moons, the human stealth fleet emerged. The ships were beautiful. Not in the way the Galaxian vessels were beautiful. All sharp angles and polished black titanium, designed to intimidate. These were something else. Sleek, dark. Their hulls coated with materials that absorbed sensor waves instead of reflecting them back. They'd been hiding in the shadows of Jupiter's moons for weeks, running on minimal power, their crews breathing recycled air and speaking in whispers. Now they moved. Captain Taho's command ship led the formation. She was small compared to the alien warships, barely a third the size of a Galaxian cruiser, but she was fast. Faster than anything the Empire had ever seen. All units, Taho said, her voice calm over the quantum comm. Target the remaining heavy cruisers. The rail guns will handle the destroyers. Our job is to make sure none of them reach the jump point." A chorus of acknowledgements answered her. The human ships accelerated. On Eternal Dominion's bridge, Vorth watched the new contacts appear on his tactical display. They'd come from behind Jupiter, a planet his scouts had declared empty with no military value, no resources worth exploiting. They'd been wronged. "Where did those ships come from?" he demanded. Hyun's claws flew across his controls. "Unknown, Admiral, they weren't there 3 minutes ago. They're not showing up on our standard scans. Our sensors are reading them as empty space." "Then how are you seeing them?" "Visual confirmation, sir. They're not even trying to hide anymore." Vorth's mandibles clicked once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed through the bridge like the rattling of dry bones. "Fire everything we have. I don't care if you hit them. Just keep them away from us." But the human ships were already inside their weapons range. Taho's fleet struck like a blade. They didn't bother with energy weapons. The Galaxian shields were too strong for that. Instead, they used the same technology that had already destroyed a third of Vorth's forces. Rail guns, tungsten rods, kinetic energy. The cruiser Vengeful Spirit took a direct hit to its engine section. The rods punched through the hull, through the reactor housing, through the magnetic containment field that kept the plasma core stable. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but Vorth felt it in his bones. "Evacuate that ship," he ordered. Too late. The Vengeful Spirit broke apart, its sections tumbling away from each other like the pieces of a child's toy that had been thrown against a wall. "Admiral, we need to jump now," Hyun said. "We can't survive another pass. The jump drive needs time to charge." "We don't have time." Another ship exploded, then another. The human rail guns were firing in rotation, 47 platforms in the asteroid belt, plus the stealth fleet's own weapons, plus the orbital defense platforms that had finally revealed themselves. The sky was full of tungsten. "All ships," Vorth said, "emergency jump on my mark. Scatter coordinates, regroup at the edge of the system." "Admiral, if we scatter, they'll pick us off one by one if we stay together. At least this way some of us might survive." Hyun hesitated. Then he nodded. The surviving Galaxian ships began to charge their jump drives. 3 miles beneath Seoul, Minsal watched the red dots scatter. Her tactical display showed the alien fleet breaking formation, each ship trying to flee in a different direction. It was a desperate move, the kind of thing a commander did when they'd already lost and just wanted to save something from the wreckage. "They're jumping," Dong Hyun said. 37 ships have already entered hyperspace. "How many left?" 43, maybe 44. It's hard to track them when they're scattering like this. Minsal touched her earlobe. "Let them go." "Coordinators. Captain Taho, do you copy?" Taho's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. "Copy, Coordinator. We have at least 40 enemy vessels attempting to flee. Should we pursue?" "Negative, Captain. Let them run. They'll carry our message better than any transmission we could send." There was a pause, then Taho said, "Understood. All units break off pursuit. Maintain defensive positions around the outer planets." The red dots continued to scatter. One by one, they winked out, jumping into hyperspace, fleeing the system that had turned into their grave. When the last ship was gone, Minsal sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the journal on her desk. The cracked leather spine, the wax thread, 29 generations of observations, all of them leading to this moment. She picked up her cold coffee and took a long, slow sip. "How long until the jump wakes spread to the galactic networks?" she asked. Dong Hyun checked his display. "The first transmissions will reach Nexus Prime within 6 hours. From there, they'll propagate through the relay network. Every major civilization in the galaxy will know within a standard week." "And what will they know?" "That 300 Galaxian warships entered the Sol system 12 minutes ago. And that 11 minutes later, only 43 of them left." Minsal nodded slowly. "That should be enough." On Nexus Prime, the news spread like fire. The trading world was the crossroads of the galaxy, a place where species from 100 different systems came to exchange goods, information, and rumors. The public broadcast screens that lined the main concourse usually showed commodity prices, shipping schedules, and the occasional entertainment program. Today, they showed war. Alien merchants gathered in clusters, their bodies stilling as they watched the footage captured by fleeing Galaxian ships. The images were grainy, transmitted in haste, compressed to fit through damaged communication arrays, but they were unmistakable. 300 warships advancing on a blue planet. Then the asteroids came alive. Then the drones dropped their camouflage. Then the human fleet emerged from the shadows of a gas giant. The footage showed explosions, ships breaking apart, the Eternal Dominion, flagship of the Galaxian Empire, turning into a cloud of debris. Commander Yex of the Andorian Republic watched the recordings on a display in the military command center. His blue-skinned face was impassive, but his cranial ridges had gone pale, a sign of stress that his species couldn't hide. Their tactical coordination is unlike anything we've encountered, he said. Every human unit moved with perfect timing, as if they were all controlled by a single mind. His adjutant, a younger officer with darker skin and sharper ridges, shook his head. Controlled or trained, the reports say they've been watching us for centuries, watching everyone. They knew exactly what we'd do before we did it. Yex considered this. Then the question is, what do they want? The adjutant had no answer. Back in the Sol system, the debris field where Eternal Dominion had once been continued to expand. Vorth's escape pod spun slowly through the wreckage. The emergency rations pack drifted past his face again, and this time he caught it, a reflex, nothing more. He had no appetite. The pod's transmitter crackled. Admiral, are you receiving? Commander Hyun's voice, shaking but alive. Yes, Vorth said, what's your status? My pod is intact. Life support holding. I have visual on at least 12 other pods in my sector, the rest, I don't know. Vorth closed his eyes. His 6 eyelids slid down over his 6 eyes, and for a moment he saw nothing but darkness. Patch me through to Imperial Command, he said. Priority Alpha, this message must reach every world in the Empire within 6 hours. The transmission will take. I don't care how long it takes, do it. Hyun's claws clicked across his pod's controls. The quantum transmitter hummed to life, connecting to the Empire's vast communication network. Vorth opened his eyes, 6 eyes, all of them focused on the transmitter. His hands were trembling, he didn't try to stop them. This is Admiral Vorth of the 4th Imperial Fleet. Emergency transmission code Red 77 Alpha. Classification, extreme threat. The Sol system is hereby designated as forbidden territory for all Imperial vessels and personnel. The species known as humans are not the primitive civilization described in our intelligence reports. They are a highly advanced military power that has been preparing for our arrival for centuries. Their defensive capabilities far exceed anything in our current tactical database. Their weapons are not energy-based. They use kinetic projectiles accelerated to near-light speed by magnetic rail systems. Our shields are ineffective against this type of attack. They have been monitoring our communications for decades. They know our ship designs, our tactical manuals, our weaknesses. They were ready. They were waiting. Do not underestimate them as we did. Vorth paused, his mandibles clicked once, just once, and then went still. The humans let us retreat. They could have killed us all, but they didn't. They wanted survivors. They wanted us to carry their message to the rest of the galaxy. The message is this: the sheep learn to hunt. Vorth out. He ended the transmission. The pod was quiet now. The crackle of the transmitter had faded. All he could hear was the hum of the life support systems and his own breathing. He looked out the viewports. Eternal Dominion was still coming apart. The bridge tower tumbled end over end, and he could see the command chairs through a ripped-open hull section. One of them was still spinning. His chair. He'd been sitting in it 3 minutes ago. 3 minutes. That was how long it had taken for 800 years of conquest to end. 3 hours after the last alien ship fled, Minsal stood on the observation deck of Sol Deep Command. The deck was a small room, no larger than a cargo container, with a single window that looked out into the darkness of the underground facility. There was nothing to see but rock and reinforced concrete, but Minsal wasn't looking at the window. She was looking at the tactical display behind her. It showed the solar system in perfect detail. The sun at the center, the planets in their orbits, the asteroid belt still dotted with the signatures of the railgun platforms, Jupiter's shadow still holding the stealth fleet, Earth blue and quiet, protected by defenses the galaxy had never imagined. And no red dots. For the first time in 3 weeks, the system was clear. Coordinators. She turned. Dong Hyun stood in the doorway, his tablet tucked under his arm. Captain Tahoe reports all pursuit craft have returned to base. They're collecting samples from the alien wreckage for analysis. He wants to know if we should continue monitoring the retreat. Negatives, let them go. Dong Hyun nodded, made a note on his tablet, then hesitated. Do you think they'll be back? Minsal considered the question. The Galaxians? No, Admiral Vorth learned his lesson today, but others will hear about this battle. Some will be curious, some will be afraid, and some will be angry enough to try where the Galaxians failed. The galaxy is a big place. It is. Full of civilizations that think they're superior to everyone else. Today we taught one of them that humans don't make easy prey. Tomorrow we'll be ready for whoever comes next. Dong Hyun looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a small, tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. 29 generations, he said, and it finally paid off. Minsal touched her earlobe. 29 generations, she agreed, and the next generation will have to pick up where we left off. She walked back to the command center. The journal was still on her desk, its cracked leather spine visible under the tactical holograms. She picked it up. The leather was warm from her hands, or maybe it was always warm, she'd never checked. The pages inside were filled with handwriting. The first entry, 847 years ago. The most recent, 6 months ago. And between them, 29 generations of women and men who had watched the galaxy and waited. Minsal closed the journal. She set it on the display table beneath the hologram of Vorth's retreat. The image showed the escape pods scattering through the debris field, fleeing toward the edge of the system. The next generation will add their notes now, she said quietly. She ran her fingers over the leather one last time. The leather will grow softer still. On the observation deck of Kepler's station, Commander Yex watched the footage again. The human ships emerged from Jupiter's shadow. They moved like they'd been practicing for centuries, because they had. They fired their weapons with precision that bordered on prescience, because they'd known exactly where the Galaxian ships would be. "They're not a threat," his adjutant said. Yex raised a cranial ridge. "Explain." "They let the survivors escape. If they wanted to conquer the galaxy, they would have killed everyone. They wouldn't have let Vorth send his warning. Or they wanted the warning sent. To what end?" Yex turned away from the display. His blue skin had regained its color, but his ridges were still pale. "To make sure everyone knows what happens when you threaten Earth." The adjutant opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Because there was no good answer to that. Back in the Sol system, the quantum sensors kept watching. The stealth platforms kept waiting. The journal sat on the display table, its leather growing softer with each passing generation. And somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning a new word for predator. The sheep learned to hunt.